Hi, Chef Joe with Healthy Kids Inc. And today we're going to be giving you a demonstration of our knives and knife skills. So what we want to do first is talk a little bit about why knives are important. First of all, they're the most important tool, in my opinion, as a chef that you'll ever use in the kitchen. No other gadgets come to mind to me that are more important than a good knife. So in my experience, when you're working with a dull knife or you're working with a knife that doesn't feel comfortable in your hand, you're going to have a long day in the kitchen and you're more prone to injuries. A dull knife causes you to have to force through your product, and when you do that, that's when you slip and you cut yourself. We thought we'd show you a few different knife skills here, a few different vegetables and a few different techniques to make your life a little bit easier. So I'm going to show you how to prepare a bell pepper. Easy enough, you can rip or cut the stem off. And then you'll notice on a bell pepper, you have what I call the humps or the ridges. And I always try to locate two of them together at any point, and that's where I like to make my first cut. So first things first, you want to slice through and turn. You're going to work your way around the bell pepper. And one thing you're probably noticing about me is that I'm not holding the knife like this. You see, not your standard grip. I don't have my finger up on top like this. I'm not holding it down here, scared of it. I actually take my thumb and forefinger and with a little pinch grip just above what we call the bolster, which is this part of the knife where the blade meets the handle. You want to wrap your fingers around like that, and it gives you much more control. And then now what you want to do with the inside of the bell peppers is actually take out any of this white membrane or the seeds. So there's a couple ways to do that. First of all, this is a good time to demonstrate what we call the claw. I've shown you how to hold the knife. Now I want to show you how to keep your other hand. This hand is actually the most important when cutting, not this one, because this is the one that will get cut. So instead of fingers out like this, if I'm chopping, you see how quickly that I can come to the edge of my fingers. You don't want to do that. You actually want to tuck your fingers under. You have the flat part of your knuckle as a guide. If you use that all day long against the flat part of your knife, you'll never cut yourself as long as your fingers are tucked in. So we call this the claw grip. It takes a little while to get used to, but when you're holding food, you want to hold it like that. Now, of course, sometimes there will be times where you want to extend your fingers, but always, always, always be extremely careful when you're doing that so that you don't slip up and cut yourself. So I'm going to show you, using my claw grip, how I would get this white part out of the pepper. What you want to do is you just slice off just a little bit, which you can mince that up, and then you want to just kind of fillet. Now you see I'm cutting towards myself, so I'm going extremely slow because it's a super sharp knife, and I want to be very, very careful. When I get part of the way there, I lift my knife up and hold on to it, and then you can just lift it right off, just like that. That's all there is to that. Next thing, say we were cutting these up for a stir fry or fajitas, and you just want what we call in cooking a julienne or matchsticks of varying thicknesses. All you got to do is we're going to use one of our 3 types of chops that I'm going to show you today, and this is called the roll chop. You can see this rolling locomotive action here. That's the most efficient way to chop, and it's actually the easiest and quickest one to kind of pick up if you're a beginner. All day long, you can roll through things like this. It's a very natural and fluid motion. So practice a little bit on your cutting board doing that, using your claw grip, just rolling back and forth. You can see I'll slow it down for you just to kind of pick up the motion. And that's all we're going to do. We're going to roll right through this bell pepper using our claw grip. Slow down to readjust whenever you need to. You can see when I get closer to my fingers, I slow down, cut right through, and you get nice strips. And then if you wanted to, the next thing to do is say you needed a dice. You can take these strips, and from these strips, cut it down into a dice, just like this. That could be used. Now you also see if you have something sticking to the side of your blade, which is common, all you have to do is take your finger and wipe away from the blade. Never towards the blade, always away. You don't ever want to come, like say you're cleaning off your knife with a towel. You don't want to come at it with the blade side down, always blade side out. You can wipe it off and then get back to work. All right, so now I'm just going to show you how to work with a simple piece of celery. This is a great thing to practice on. You'll notice, as opposed to, say, a carrot, carrots are rounded vegetable just like many others. Potatoes, squash, zucchini, cucumbers, a lot of things are round. You'll find that that kind of causes an issue because things roll around. The reason I like to practice on celery is because it is a much more stable vegetable to start working with. You don't have to do anything to it other than clean it, and it's ready for you to practice with. So this is a great place to start. If you wanted to practice some more of your roll chop, just roll back and forth through. Look how easy that is. I know I've been doing this for a while, but you'd be surprised if you cut up a whole bag of celery. By the time you get down to the end of it, you're going to be a pro. Now, that was pretty simple, but like I said, celery is a great place to practice chopping. Now, we're going to move on to something a little bit more difficult now, and that is the carrot. For the carrot, you can peel it if you want to. A lot of times we'll leave the peel right on, but I've washed it really well, and I've dried it off so that my board isn't wet and slippery. And I'm going to begin by cutting the ends off just a little bit, just to get rid of the woody ends. And then you can see that problem I was talking about. You've got the rolling motion, so we need to do something to take care of that. So I typically take a vegetable peeler. Yeah, so what you want to do, you can see I flattened it off. I'm going to do it a little bit more. You just want to do it just enough until it becomes stable on your board. That way you don't waste too much of the carrot. And then again, with your roll chop, you can roll right through, get small rounds like that. If you wanted something different, I always take a larger piece and cut it down into more manageable pieces. So a large carrot you may cut in half to work with. And then cut that in half again. And again, it's really all about breaking things down into smaller pieces and manipulating your product to do what you need. So again, I bunched this up. You can see I had 4 stalks or 4 strips here to work with and made pretty quick work of it just using our roll chop. So hopefully by now you've got a little bit of a feeling of what the roll chop is like. I'm going to grab some fresh basil from the fridge and show you a couple of other techniques. So all I've done here is just pick some basil leaves, and I'm going to show you a technique that the French call a chiffonade, which is a fancy term for ribbon cut. So you can remember it as ribbon cut, or if you want to stump your friends, you can remember chiffonade. So what you want to do is take your leaves and kind of stack them up just about as neatly as you can, but you don't have to take too much time to worry about flattening them out perfectly, as long as they're relatively flat. Get yourself a stack, and then what you want to do, following the natural curve of the leaf, you just kind of want to roll it up. Okay, into a little bundle like that, just like rolling up a piece of newspaper. And then what you want to do, using your roll chop, one more time, and roll right through. You may say, Chef, that seems like an awful lot of work, but you'll see why here in just a second. First of all, you can throw your stems away, or if they're nice soft stems, you don't even have to worry about that. But now you can see what this does is it gives you these nice ribbons. And you can see we haven't bruised our basil in the least bit. You would almost never know that it has been cut. With a standard knife, you would end up with a lot of black, mushy basil, and that's not what you want. It's not appealing. If you were going to put this in a salad or as a garnish on top or even in your soup, you don't want that nasty looking basil. So look how beautiful and crisp that basil still is because of how sharp our knife is. So it just goes to show a sharp knife goes a long way. So now I'm going to show you, I'm just going to go ahead and take these ribbons. Same process as if you were going to now say you wanted to mince this basil up or to finely chop it. all you want to do is kind of bundle it together, and I'm going to show you the next chop, and this is probably one of my favorites. This is the rock and chop. What you want to do is put your hand flat on top of the spine of the knife, just like this. No fingers down because you will cut yourself. Palm flat on top, and then you can see rocking back and forth, just lifting up. All of the action is right here on the knife. You're chopping with the back part of the knife, keeping the tip on the board, back and forth. Now this is perfect for mincing, for quick chopping. You will use this cut every single day when you're prepping for your meals. So I'm going to show you real quick how to run through this basil and chop it up nice and fine. Very deliberate strokes, up, down, up, down. And what you can do, again, if something sticks, just wipe it right off. Okay. All right, so now, last but not least, the onion. This works for any type of onion, red onion. You know, there's not a specific way to cut one versus the other. What you really want to do, though, is become familiar with the anatomy of the onion. You have what we call the top and the bottom, or the root end. The root end normally has a lot of stringy bits hanging off. I normally try and pick those off so they don't get mixed up with the onion. So first off, before you cut it in half, I always just slice off just the very tip top, throw it away. Now you've got that stable base, and then you want to cut it in half through the root. Now, I know a lot of people are used to cutting the root end off. We're not going to do that, and the reason why is that root end actually holds the onion together. It's not going to fly apart on you when you're chopping, so leave that root end on until the very, very last minute, and I'll show you how to work with it now. So you've got your half of your onion. Everybody's favorite part here is peeling the onion. Now, this is the part where I'm sure some of you are thinking, all right, I'm already crying. Well, first of all, you've got two really good methods to prevent crying with an onion. The first and foremost, the most important, is a sharp knife. When you use a dull knife and you're cutting an onion, you're actually crushing the onion, you're not cutting it. And when you crush that onion, it releases the gas. That gas likes to go to the first source of moisture that it can find, which is typically your eyes, because of the tears in your eyes, and then it just creates more tears, and the next thing you know, you look like you've watched a really sad movie instead of enjoying yourself in the kitchen. Second thing, just a glass of water. Set it near your cutting board, and that kind of gets those gases to go from your onion, and instead of up to your face, over to the glass of water. So I always try to keep it nearby. You can set it on the edge of your cutting board, and that helps a whole lot. You've got your flat surface, your root end is still intact, and now say you just want slices for a salad or a stir fry. That roll chop that we did earlier comes in great use here. Just like that, and then you can break these apart into your strips. Now the dreaded dice of the onion. This is the part that most people have difficulty with. So first things first, you want to move your onion to the very edge of your cutting board so that the back of your knife can be off of the board. Again, stable surface, your claw on top holding it down firm. You want to make a slice almost all the way through. I'm coming back about this far, but not cutting all the way through my onion. I'm leaving it attached at the root end. We're going to move upwards and cut a little bit more through, and you're going to do this as many times. The more times you do it, the smaller your dice is going to end up being. So if you only do 2, you might end up with a large dice. If you do 3 or 4 cuts, you're going to end up with a smaller or a medium, depending on how many cuts you make. Next thing, you want to turn your onion towards you, and you can kind of see the natural lines in an onion. A red onion's perfect for this because you can really see the lines, but you can kind of see them even on this white onion. The lines that kind of naturally follow the onion, that can be your guide. So what you want to do now, again, almost all the way back, leaving a little bit of space at the end, cutting straight down, following the curve of the onion. Okay, now you see I've got 3 little onion pieces that have fallen apart. If you had that root end off of there, you would have onions scattering everywhere. But everything is still nice and together. And let's see if we can get a shot of the grid pattern that I've created on the onion to get my dice. If I start to spread the onion apart even more, you can really see that it's all held together. All right, so now all that is left to do is I've turned my onion back to the original position that I had when I made my cross cuts. So remember, cross cuts, your down cuts that kind of follow the arc of the onion. Turn it back, and now what we're going to do is come down straight through, and you're going to end up with a nice, perfect, beautiful dice every time. No tears, no fuss, easy as that. You can see when you get down to the end that you've kind of left hanging on. Then you can kind of do a little bit of a rough chop on it. This is a point where, say, we needed to mince these onions for something. You've got these rough pieces over here. It's a good time to use your rock and chop. So you've learned the roll chop. This is the rock and chop. That's the second. You've got your dice. I've showed you how to get strips. We've minced. We've done the rock and chop, the roll chop. I've showed you how to cut fresh herbs. Bell pepper, carrot, and again, same thing with a potato or anything. It's the same principles on any vegetable. You just want to slow down. You want to use the appropriate grip on your knife, the appropriate grip with your guide hand. You just want to go slow, and eventually you'll pick up speed as you pick up confidence. And I hope these tips have helped.